Hey, this is the Daily Overpass. My name is Eric and I make apps. Now today, let's answer the question, should you translate your entire app or just the description? Okay, so today I want to answer a question that came in last week from an older video, episode 430. It came in from someone called A Man Called Jay, which is an awesome name, right? I wish when I started Overpass I called it A Man Called E, because that just sounds like the man in a high castle or something cool like that. But anyway, this comment is very, very long, so I'm not going to read all of it, but I'm going to read a good portion of it. So Marvin, wherever you are, could you please put this up on the screen as I read it? So what he says is, from what this indie newbie has been learning lately, thanks by the way, I believe internationalization and localization are two different things and not wholly inclusive of one another, which leads me to ask if you could share some thoughts on splitting the hair with this dilly of a pickle. You know what, Jay? I'm afraid that I use them interchangeably. Sometimes I call globalization, sometimes I call localization. There may be a difference between the two of them, but whenever I say it, I use them both because they're the same to me. And if there is a difference, please somebody put it in the comments, because I may have been saying it wrong half the time. And he says, that is to say, I thought I saw you give an example of an older video you made, one English app, and then localize it in different languages with the added note in each respective store description that the app only displayed in English, leading to some success. As much as I watched you more recently discuss reworking your apps to internationalize them with the ability to display multiple languages, aligning with your localization and therefore no longer needing the aforementioned note, leading to the greater success. As much as I find myself in this scenario, my app has text but graphics with built-in words too, and this is uninternationalized source code I brought rescreen. And he goes on to say, because he has images, it's difficult for him to internationalize his app because he's got words in the images like buttons with the label on them, that kind of stuff, that it makes it really difficult. So let me just clarify what the two different ways that I've done it in the past. So I've done the full-on thing where we've gone through and we've taken the strings.xml out of the Android app. For the Android app, for the Corona apps, we just start putting everything into variables and having one config file, so we have the English version of it, right? And then once you get that, it's easy to send that off to translators and get them to get it done. But sometimes, like when we were first doing it, we were doing the same thing. Right now we have a rule that if we ever have a button or anything like that, and it's a graphical button, then we'll just do the background. We don't put images, we don't put words and images unless it's absolutely necessary. So like the title image, for example, sometimes that'll have words in it, it'll have the title on it, right? So that's like a rule going forward, but we still have some old stuff which is still that way. So yes, there's an example of an app that we did called Chemistry Alley, where everything was in English, right? It was just too difficult to change it. So rather than go through and internationalize it for all these other languages, I just put like a little description in the text and said, this app requires English. And then I went through and for this one, because I was just testing it out, I went and used Google Translate. And I went through and I translated it into all the languages, and then I put those into the descriptions, into the keywords, and the title. Now I didn't change the title, but I did change the subtitle at the end of it. Right? And it did double the performance of it. And what I should have done was gone through and get it professionally translated. So there's two different ways you can localize it. You could just localize the description and the description and the keywords and your subtitle if you have that, because that would be what people search for. That's going to help your ASO efforts, because people are searching, most likely they're searching in their home language. They're not going to search in English if they're not English speaking. So using that, then you can find out whether or not you need to localize the application. The best way to do it is to localize both, because people are they might search on a keyword and then they'll find your app and then it's only in English, and they may download it and be upset, but they should see by the screenshots that it's in English. So that's why I put that little bit in there. So I've done both ways, right? See, what I think is, if you're going to invest in localizing it in all these other languages, you should find out whether or not they work. I think the easiest thing to do is localize the description and the keywords and the subtitle only, and put a little something in there saying you requires English to learn it. If you know English, then you should be able to figure it out. And if it's all text, then that might not work. But you have to think about what they're searching on. How are they finding your application? Most likely, it's through search. Unless you're doing some sort of ad campaign or it gets featured or something like that, they're searching on something. And if they're going to be searching on something, they'll probably be searching on their own, in their own language, and that's where you can go through and do that. And Google Translate, so here's what happened with Chemistry Alley. I translated it all in Google Translate in one just to test it out. It was successful. I never even bothered going through doing it because it doesn't make a lot of money, right? Even with the downloads, it doesn't make a lot of money, which is, it's entirely on me, right? So what I did, I noticed Google Translate really helped on the iTunes side, on the Google Play side, sorry, on the App Store side. But on Google Play, it made no difference whatsoever. And I think the reason is that Google Play probably uses Google Translate by default anyway, so it's not going to make a difference. But if you could go, but when we did Ear Agent and we had that localized in all the different languages, we saw those shot up and triple. Not when we changed the APK, not when we, because we were still waiting for the languages. It happened when we changed the description because the people were finding it through search, and it was just, that's what it is. So I would recommend anybody who's thinking about localizing their applications and you're not able to do the entire app, like the text within it, or it's too much work, because that may be, because you're talking about every place where you have like a pop-up or a dialogue or whatever, going through and replacing that hard-coded string with a variable, which you should do. It's good practice anyway, but you find out good practices after you go through bad practices sometimes, right? And you have to go through and make all those changes. And before you do that, try the description. I did a video on localizing apps where I talked about how I went on Upwork and I just said, I'll pay $5 a language. Here's the text. Take your text out of Google Play, put it into a Google Doc, take your description, your title, your screenshot text, you might need to write that out, but that's not as important for search. Put it in Google Talk, share that on Upwork and say, I'm looking for someone, I've got this amount of words, I'm looking for someone to translate in a native language. Like for me, I don't need a professional translator, I just need someone who knows the language. I need someone who is better than Google Translate. So that was my whole way for it. So anyway, a man called Jay, I hope that helps. I hope that helps the rest of you guys out there. If you have not tried localizing your apps into different languages, do that. Go into analytics, find out where's the top countries that are downloading your app, and go through and localize it into that. And you may see a big improvement. I mean, I definitely did. And that is it for today. I'll talk to you guys again tomorrow.